Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. My name is Rajakumar and in this video I'm going to introduce you to the subject of economy from civil services examination point of view. And this video is exclusively for those students who are about to start their civil service examination preparation. Right. Most of you are from engineering background, medicine background, law background, or you might have been graduated from any art subject with little exposure to the subject of economy. So owing to this lack of exposure, a lot of students have multiple apprehensions about this subject. Let me tell you, economy is a pretty scientific, technical and pretty objective subject. Unlike other humanities subjects which are relatively abstract in nature. Right? So due to lack of exposure, most of you must be wondering how to deal with this subject. What exactly is this subject? What are the kind of topics are involved in this subject? What are the sources? What is the significance of this subject from the civil services examination point of view? And how to deal with this subject? If you have any of these doubts, all your doubts will be addressed by the end of this class. Right? So in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the subject and I'm not going to explain or dwell deeper into any concepts. Rather, I would give you a superficial understanding of the subject. So let's start without any further ado. First, let's talk about the significance of this subject from prelims perspective. Every year, there are around 16 to 17 questions which are asked from economy in prelims. So that's what the history has been saying. In the last 5 to 6 years, there are about 16 to 17 questions on an average every year. 16 to 17 questions are appeared from this subject in the prelims, which means at least 32 to 34 marks are ensured from this subject alone. 32 to 30 marks can be answered, can be ensured, can be scored from only this subject in prelims. You'll be able to appreciate its weightage once you are aware of the cutoff. Let me tell you, 2024 prelims cutoff was around 88. This was the general cutoff. 88 marks in prelims, which means more than one third of the marks, one third of the cutoff can be scored only through economy questions. That is the significance of economy from prelims point of view. Now let us look at the mains weightage. As I told you, from the civil service examination point of view, economy subject is both objective and analytical in nature. Owing to this dual nature of the subject, it has equal weightage, equal significance in mains examination as well. You know, in the last 5 years, at least 100 to 110 marks were asked from 110 marks worth questions have been asked from economy in GS paper 3. Mains GS paper 3. At least 100 marks can be ensured from GS paper 3 in from economy in GS paper 3. That means there are around 8 questions, 4 10 marker questions and 4 15 marker questions are asked from economy in GS paper 3. This is the weightage. However, see, the significance of economy is not just confined to for the first two stages of the examination. It is also very important for the ultimate stage, which is the interview. During the interview time, interview panel would ask you questions about the current affairs and the happenings that are happening around the world and in India. Being a pretty dynamic subject, there is lot of scope for current affairs in economy. So they may ask you any issue that is happening in the world. For example, I'll give you some examples. See, recently IMF has given $1 billion of loan to Pakistan. It was given a week back during Operation Sindoor phase. In fact, most of them questioned the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, as to why it is providing credit support to a country which is sponsoring the terrorist activities. In fact, a lot of experts and journalists also criticized, questioned Indian government despite being a significant member of IMF and despite having significant voting rights, how it could not prevent IMF from giving credit support to the Pakistan, especially during this stage. So any controversial or debatable question can be asked in the interviews during the interview stage to understand your argumentative skills. However, in order to be able to answer such kind of questions, you need to have basic understanding of what exactly International Monetary Fund is all about. Why was it initiated? Why was it established in the first place? What is its purpose? What are its functions? What is the contribution of multiple different countries towards this fund? What are their voting rights? And what are the different kinds of credit facilities that are extended by this fund? Who are the beneficiaries? You need to have this basic information to answer any kind of analytical question on these kind of current affairs topics. This is the significance of economy. Let's take another example. Let's say in the last few months, the America's policies like the reciprocal tariff policies have impacted countries like India and China. So a question can be asked in the interview asking you to answer about the impact of these reciprocal tariff policies adopted by the India on emerging economies like India. Again, in order to be able to answer this question, you need to have basic understanding of the nature of exports, nature of imports undertaken by the Indian economy. What is the value of Indian currency and what is the impact of these policies on currency exchange value of rupee? What is going to be the impact of foreign investment coming into India and foreign investment going out of the India? What are the impacts of these policies on remittance income to India? All these aspects will be understood. So if you have proper understanding of this basic information, only then you can able to answer any such kind of analytical questions during the interview phase. So what I'm trying to say is that economy as a subject is very important and significant at each and every stage of the examination, prelims, mains and interview. Of course, it is needless to say that the advantage or the benefit of this subject is going to help you in arriving at information, informed decision making even after you become a bureaucrat. It is going to guide your decision making throughout your life. That is the significance of economy as a subject, right? So now that you understood the significance of the economy from civil services examination point of view, let me introduce you to the subject through some of the topics or the most important topics from prelims point of view. Okay, so the prelims syllabus is not well delineated by the UPSC. However, these are the 8 the most important topics from the point of view of prelims. See, I'm not saying that questions will not be asked beyond these 8 important topics. Of course, there is scope for questions beyond this topic. However, these are the most important topics which each and every aspirant should be thorough with so that they will be ready for prelims examination. Okay, so let me introduce you to these topics. First and foremost, money supply. Under this chapter, you are going to study about the characteristic feature of money. What is money? What are the basic functions of money? What are the factors that determine the demand for the money? In what context the demand for the money is going to be increased in the economy? In what context the demand for money is going to be decreased in the economy? What are the factors which determine the supply of the money in the economy? And what are the new forms of money? Like for example, the Reserve Bank of India has recently introduced the central bank digital currency, which is colloquially known as e-rupee. How is this digital rupee different from the fiat currency? That means the physical rupee or the physical currency. What are the similarities? What are its applications? What was the need for introduction of a new digital rupee? All these aspects will be covered under this subject, money supply. You'll also be able to understand who prints the currency, who mints the coins, how much of currency is supposed to be printed by the Reserve Bank of India, and what are the factors which determine the quantity of the money that is to be printed by the Reserve Bank of India in an economy, in our economy. So all these aspects will be covered under this chapter, money supply. Very important topic. And the other topic, banking and monetary policy, probably the most important topic from prelims point of view. Banking and monetary policy, this is the chapter from which major chunk of the questions are asked in prelims. Every year at least 2 to 3 questions are compulsorily asked from this topic, banking and monetary policy. That is the importance of this subject, that is the importance of this topic. Under banking chapter, you are going to learn about everything about the banking sector. That means, how does a bank function, how does a bank operate, what are its assets, what are its liabilities, what are the issues faced by the banking sector due to its operations, how banks are regulated, what are the impact of these issues faced by the bank in the larger economy, and what were the steps taken by the government to improve the banking sector. Very important from the prelims point of view. And monetary policy, what is monetary policy, what is the role of a central bank, which is Reserve Bank of India? I mean, why do we need a Reserve Bank in the first place? What is its function? What are the strategies? What are the tools that are available with the RBI to control the inflation? All these topics will be covered under this chapter, banking and monetary policy. The other chapter is financial markets. Financial markets. In this chapter, you are going to study about the entire stock market, the instruments that are traded in the stock market. What is the stock market? How the stock markets are regulated? What are the various instruments that are traded in the stock market, like equities, debt instruments, like shares, bonds, derivatives, mutual funds, futures and options? All these topics will be studied, and this is predominantly a prelims oriented topic. There is no scope for mains questions from this chapter, financial markets. Okay, in fact, earlier there were not many questions from this chapter, but in the recent past, from the last 2 to 3 years, UPSC has given too much of emphasis on this chapter, because with the increasing relevance of stock market in the Indian economy, they are also testing your knowledge of the financial markets and the wide range of instruments that are traded in the financial markets. And other important topic is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy refers to the budget policies of the government. See, even if you're not an aspirant, even if you have never been exposed to this subject of economy, at least you might be aware of the fact that each and every government, be it state government or the central government, they release budget every year. You might have seen in the newspapers or the television. The finance minister introduced the budget in the parliament. It is introduced with much fanfare. So have you ever thought about what exactly this budget is all about? So just like an individual would have a miniature budget of his income and expenses every month, even the government would have a proper broad budget of its income and expenditure, and it properly plans where is the income is coming, where is the income going to come from, and where is the government going to spend in the next 1 year, next financial year. Fiscal policy talks about all these mobilization of resources and expenditure, and how to reduce the borrowings and how to reduce the debt of the government, taxes, direct taxes, indirect taxes. All these aspects are studied under fiscal policy. And external sector, one more interesting topic. External sector, in this chapter you are going to study about all the cross-border transactions that is made by India with the other countries, like exports, imports, foreign remittances, external borrowings, foreign investment. Each and every cross-border transaction is to be studied under external sector. And this is the chapter where you are going to study about the reasons for depreciating value of the rupee. So even if you're not an aspirant, you might have heard about the value of rupee with respect to the dollar has been depreciating over the period. Right now, the $1 equal to more than 80 rupees. It used to be 70 rupees earlier. It has depreciated to 80 over the period. At least you are aware of this fact. You must be wondering what are the reasons for this depreciating value. The reasons will be studied under this chapter, external sector. Right. And inflation. We keep hearing about this term inflation in the newspapers, in the news articles, in the day-to-day life. So this is about price levels, hike in the price level in the economy. What is its impact? What is inflation? What are the different types of inflation? What are different types of inflation? And how inflation is controlled by the Reserve Bank of India? And what is the consumer behavior during the time of high inflation? All these aspects are studied under this chapter. And agriculture, everything about agriculture. Agriculture is very important word for prelims and mains. Okay, though it is predominantly a mains oriented topic, UPSC has been asking questions time and again from this chapter in prelims as well. So you need to be aware of cropping patterns, different agriculture seasons, cropping seasons, and you need to be aware of the agriculture markets and how they are regulated in India, minimum supporting price, and other important initiatives and schemes that are undertaken by the government to improve the farmers' income and improve the agriculture sector. All these are very important for both prelims and mains as well. Okay, and the same thing goes with industry and infrastructure, though it is again mains oriented topic. Questions have been asked from this chapter in prelims as well. You need to be aware of all the industrial policies and schemes introduced by the government to improve the sector, and also the initiative taken by the government to improve the infrastructure base in the economy, like roads, railways, ports, civil aviation, energy infrastructure, special economic zones, industrial corridors. All these are studied in infrastructure chapter. So these are the most important topics in the subject of economy from prelims point of view. However, apart from these chapters, there are other relatively less important topics which you need to be studied, that is national income, national accounting. Under national accounting, you are going to study about GDP. You might have heard about the term GDP in the newspapers, right? What is GDP? What is national income? What is gross national product? All these aspects are studied under this chapter, national accounting. And inclusive growth. Under inclusive growth, you will be able to study about all the initiatives and schemes that are taken by the government for the benefit of vulnerable sections, like all the pension schemes, insurance schemes like Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, and all the schemes that were introduced for the financial inclusion, social security schemes like National Pension Scheme, Pradhan Mantri Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan Yojana. All these schemes are supposed to be studied under inclusive growth, and questions have been asked in prelims on these topics. And microeconomy. So microeconomic topics, this is also relatively important, not as important as these 8 topics are, of course. Questions have been asked on demand and supply, consumer behavior, different types of goods. All these aspects have been asked in prelims before. See, yes, questions can be asked in these 3 topics as well beyond these 8 topics. However, the weightage is relatively limited compared to these 8 topics. So that is why I am asking the aspirants to put lot of emphasis on these 8 topics first, and once you are done with these topics, you can go through these 3 topics as well, right? So this is about the economy as a subject from prelims point of view. Now let me explain you the main syllabus. Let me showcase you the main syllabus, which was mentioned in the notification pretty detailed. This is the syllabus of Economy from GS paper 3 in mains. Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. Inclusive growth and issues arising from it. As I told you, under inclusive growth, you are going to study about all the policies taken by the government for the benefit of population. Okay. Government budgeting, of course, this is important for both prelims and mains. Major crops, cropping patterns, irrigation practices, and different kinds of irrigation practices, agricultural marketing issues, transport issues, issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidies, buffer stock norms, public distribution system, food processing industries. Basically everything about agriculture is important from the point of view of mains. In fact, this is the syllabus point from where major chunk of the questions are going to be asked in the mains GS paper 3. And it's followed by land reforms, effect of LPG, liberalization of the economy, changes in the industrial policies and its impact, infrastructure and investment models. So I know going through this main syllabus might sound Greek and Latin to you because you haven't started your preparation yet, so you may not appreciate the syllabus properly, but you will understand its significance once you start your preparation. Okay, probably if you go through the basics textbooks, you may be able to understand the significance of the main syllabus that I have just explained. So that brings me to the discussion of sources. What are the sources? How do we start the subject of economy, especially for those students who have never been exposed to this subject? The last time you had gone through this subject was way back in your school probably. Okay, so please, I suggest students to start with this textbook for class 11, Indian Economic Development. This is a very beautiful book where it discusses the economic history of India. That means what were the impacts of British colonial policies on Indian economy and what was the status of Indian economy at the time of independence. Once India had got independence, how the successful policies of the Indian government had shaped the Indian economy in its agriculture, industry and service sector as a whole. And also it talks about LPG reforms, very important. It talks about LPG reforms. This is considered as the watershed moment in the economic history of India. Indian economic history is compared pre-LPG and post-LPG eras. That was the significant issue. That was the significance of these reforms. So in this textbook, it was clearly mentioned what prompted the government of India to introduce these LPG reforms and what exactly are these LPG reforms: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And what was the impact of these policies, both the positive and negative impacts. It was beautifully explained in this textbook, and the explanation was pretty lucid. Anybody can understand this textbook. Even if you never had exposure to this subject, you can still read the textbook and understand it. It's just like a story. So I suggest you to start with this textbook, Indian Economic and Development. And this is pretty much important for mains rather than prelims. However, the next textbook is textbooks for class 12th, which is Introductory Microeconomics. Under this textbook, you are going to study banking and monetary policy, money supply, budget of the government, balance of payments, inflation, all these topics. All those topics which I have already mentioned as part of the prelims preparation. All these topics will be covered under this second textbook. So this textbook is very important from prelims point of view. First start with this subject. Once you're done, go to this textbook. And the other textbook is Introductory Microeconomics. Go to this textbook once you're done with these two, because in terms of weightage it is relatively limited. The scope of microeconomics is relatively limited in civil service examination. However, in this textbook, you are going to study about supply and demand, the microeconomic topics like supply and demand and consumer behavior, different types of goods. All these aspects are going to be studied. Questions have been asked in prelims. It is not a mains oriented textbook. It is relatively important for prelims. However, I'll give it less emphasis. I'll suggest you to give less emphasis on this textbook. Go to this textbook only once you're done with these two textbooks. So these are the sources. These are the basic textbooks that you're supposed to start with if you want to start the economy subject for civil service examination. Right? So now that you know the sources, do you think, I'm not saying that these textbooks are more than enough to attempt prelims and mains papers. Of course not. Beyond these basic textbooks, you need value addition. You need value addition over and above these basic sources. So for that value addition, you can pick any coaching material, any standard textbook that is available in the market exclusively for the civil services examination, like Ramesh Singh. Ramesh Singh textbook is relatively better. Even though it is pretty bulky, you need to filter out those unimportant topics. So for that matter, you can follow your coaching class notes if at all you're taking any coaching. Any standard source that is available in the market is enough. So these three sources, and beyond that, over and above these basic sources, you need a standard book exclusively for civil services examination that is available in the market. And beyond that, there is a third source, which is newspaper. Very important. Newspaper is very important because economy is a pretty dynamic subject. There is lot of scope for current affairs. So the best source for current affairs is newspaper. Okay. Of course, if you open the newspaper directly, you may not get anything out of it. If you have to go through the newspaper and understand something out of it, you need to be aware of the basic concepts. For that, you need to start with these NCERT textbooks. Only then you can understand and appreciate what the newspaper is talking about any particular economic issue. Till then, it is going to be Greek and Latin to you. Understand? So you have the sources, but how are you going to deal with the subject? It's not that you have the textbooks and you keep reading the textbooks without any goal. If you have to understand the goal, you need to understand the demand of the exam. What kind of questions are going to be asked, and what is going to be tested by the UPSC from you with respect to this subject. UPSC is going to demand three important aspects from you at three different levels: conceptual understanding, analytical understanding, and your current affairs knowledge. These three dimensions are going to be tested. So I'll explain you these three aspects through an example. Let's say you are preparing a topic known as inflation. Okay. You're preparing a chapter, inflation in the economy. What is inflation? The general hike in the price levels of wide range of commodities and goods and services in the economy. That is inflation. That means the price hike in the economy is inflation. So any aspirant who is going to start with the subject of or the topic of inflation, I would expect the student or the aspirant to understand what is inflation, what are different kinds of inflation, what are different types of inflation, and what are the causes of inflation. That means what are the demand side factors and what are the supply side factors, and what are the consequences of inflation. How is it going to impact the consumer behavior? How is it going to impact the creditors, borrowers, and how is it going to impact the value of the currency in the economy? And what is the role of Reserve Bank of India in controlling the inflation? And what are the different tools that are available for the Reserve Bank of India to control inflation? All these aspects are supposed to be understood by the aspirant. That is what the conceptual understanding. The basic conceptual understanding is necessary because this is going to be tested in your prelims. Just look at the question that was asked in 2021 prelims. Which one of the following is likely to be the most inflationary in its effects? That means it is asking about the cause and consequences of the inflation. repayment of public debt, borrowing from the public to finance a budget deficit, borrowing from the banks to finance a budget deficit, or creation of new money to finance a budget deficit. In fact, the answer is D, but to able to arrive at the right option, the right answer, you need to have the basic core conceptual understanding. You need to know what are the context or what are the factors which results in the inflation, which results in inflation in the economy. So if you have the conceptual understanding, you can answer any question in the prelims. And this conceptual understanding is going to helpful for your analytical understanding, which is going to be tested in your mains. Let me take you through this question that was asked in 2024 mains GS paper 3. What are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? And comment on the effectiveness of monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. Look at the question. It is asking you to comment upon the effectiveness of the RBI monetary policy with respect to the food inflation in the India. This is the analytical understanding that I'm asking, that I'm talking about. To answer this question, you need to have analytical understanding. Okay. For conceptual understanding and analytical understanding, I have already given you two sources. One, the NCERT textbooks, and two, the basic textbook or the basic standard material that is available in the market. Right. And in most of the mains questions, they are also going to ask you to give suggestions. They will ask you to suggest some measures to overcome any issue. So analytical understanding and problem solving skills are going to be tested from you. And the third dimension is current affairs knowledge. As I said, for current affairs knowledge, newspaper is the best source. If in the initial phase, if you are not able to read the newspaper all by yourself, you can take the help of any current affairs magazine that is available in the market, or any current affairs based videos that are available in the YouTube, if you cannot do it all by yourself in the initial phase. However, let me tell you how to deal the current affairs articles in the newspaper. For example, if you come across any article in the newspaper, let's say this article was taken from Mint newspaper, and this is with respect to the inflation. In this article, it is talking about the rising debate over excluding food inflation from the monetary policy targets of Reserve Bank of India. You know what I would be doing once I look at this article? The first thing that I'm going to do is to brush my conceptual understanding about inflation. First of all, I'll open the textbook, the basic textbook, and I'll go through what is inflation, what are the basic factors that determine the inflation, and what are different inflation, and what are the ways in which RBI could control inflation in the economy. And then I'll come back to this article and I'm going to read what the author is talking about in this article. So reading these kind of articles in the newspaper is going to not only help you to brush your core conceptual knowledge, but also it is going to enrich your analytical understanding to answer the questions in the mains and also give proper answers during the interview stage as well. So that is how you have to add current affairs to your static knowledge. And for subject like economy, which is pretty dynamic, it is very important to add current affairs and dynamic topics into your static subject. So that is about the demand, and that is how you are going to deal with the subject. So you understood what is economy as a subject from the civil services examination point of view, and what is its weightage in prelims, mains, and interview, and what are the different sources, and what is the demand of the exam, and how to go about it. So I'm sure most of your answers and queries might have been addressed. If you still have any doubt, please ask your questions in the comment section. I'm going to reach out to you. And in the coming videos, I'm also going to discuss about certain current affairs with respect to the economy subject, and probably some PYQ analysis to shed more light on this subject. Okay, so I'll meet you soon with more videos. Till then, see you. All the best. Thank you very much.